My name is Ed Saperic, and I was born in 1951. I'm 73 years old, and I was born in Lakewood, New York, just outside of Jamestown, New York, and I went to school there and graduated from Southwestern Central High School in 1969. As a kid, everything was very different than today. There wasn't staying at home and being on computers and things of that nature. We were always on our bicycles with our baseball bats, with our baseball glove, run through the bat over my shoulder, and I was on my bicycle, and I was riding off somewhere to a ballpark, and we always had sandlot ball games planned and taking place. Sometimes I would walk up the street, and I would get on the railroad tracks, and I would walk the railroad tracks to the nearest ballpark, because of course the tracks were the closest, that was the most direct. So we played a lot of ball. Summer times, of course, we went to the beach. We lived near a lake, Lake Chautauqua, and if we didn't want to go to the beach, we'd just go right down across the street and jump in the lake there and swim with the folks, jump off the docks. They had rafts out there as well. So summer times weren't really boring. My dad was a scout leader, and I was a Cub Scout. I did a lot of scouting, a lot of camping. It was just, it was a good way of life. I mean, I enjoyed every bit of it. I wasn't the only child. I have an older brother. He's 3 years older than myself. He still lives in that area. His name is Joe. Well, actually, it's Raymond, but there were so many Raymonds in our family that he went by his nickname. Like in this family now, we have a lot of Scots, but then there was a lot of Joes, or Raymonds, so we call him Joe, and he's up in upstate New York, in the Jamestown area. Prior to graduating in 1967, I met Marsha. She asked me to go on a hayride, and the hayride got canceled. I don't know if maybe it was because of weather, or maybe not. I don't remember. But then I turned around and asked her if she would go to the prom with me. I was a junior in high school. She was a sophomore, and luckily she said she would go with me. And that's where our romance started. We went to, and we dated for those couple of years, and I graduated in 1969, which was the same year that I enlisted in the Air Force. And 6 months after that, in 1970, we became one. I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. That was a good day for me.
My name is Marsha K. Ellis Saperic, and I was born in 1952. 11 months after Ed was born. And I have an older brother, Steve, and 2 younger sisters, a sister, Cindy, that was just 2 years younger than me, and then 10 years later, a younger sister, Wendy, that I treated like my baby doll for the first 5 years of her life, because I was 10 when she was born. And we lived out in the country, and it was beautiful there. My best friend had a horse, and so growing up, I would go to Emily's house and ride horse in the summer, or go to the creek and look at tadpoles and snapping turtles and all the fun things that kids do out in the country. It was very beautiful. In the winter, we had lots of snow. I ice skated, and we loved to go tobogganing and sledding. And it was a fun childhood. It was a great place to grow up. I went to Celeron School, where Lucille Ball graduated from high school. That was my elementary school. And then I went to Southwestern High School, where I was in chorus and in cheerleading. And while I was cheerleading, there was this young, handsome fella that made 3 touchdowns one game, and I had his name, so I had to sing and do the cheer for Ed Saperic. And that's how I heard of his name. And I thought he was awful cute, and I thought, boy, I sure would like to go somewhere with him. And I was involved in our church youth group, and our church youth group was going to have a hayride. And so I thought this would be a good way to get to know him, to invite him something our church was having. So I invited him, and it rained and it got canceled, and I was so sad. And then we pick up where Ed asked me to a very formal dance at school, and it was wonderful. We had a wonderful time, and from the very beginning, we were kind of kindred spirits. We had a lot in common. We loved a lot of the same things, and we hung around with a lot of the same people, and life was good. My parents were wonderful. My mom was the most supportive. My dad was very busy. He was a volunteer fireman, and he owned his own business, bricklayer. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom at first, and she did everything for us. And we were very much like the Leave It to Beaver Cleaver family. We always sat down at family dinners, and Mom took us to church every Sunday. But usually it was Mom and the kids, and Dad was at the fire hall. So he did go on special occasions, but I was very active with Mom in choir. And church was a big part of our lives then. My older brother was in sports and very intellectual and smart and 2 years older than me. But my sister that was 2 years younger than me, I was very close to Cindy, and we did a lot of things together, including fight a lot. But we always shared a bedroom, so we knew each other's secrets. Yeah, it was wonderful. Fun stories was when we would all get our ice skates out, and there was a pond very near. And how did our parents let us go to the pond and skate without supervision? I don't know, but I guess because it was so cold, they knew it was safe. But between the creeks and the ponds, we would all get our ice skates and go and have bonfires and ice skating throughout the whole winter.
We would go out on the lake after it would freeze over, Lake Chautauqua, and we'd all grab our snow shovels and we'd shovel off a hockey rink. Mm-hmm. And then all the kids would show up, and we'd make up teams, and we'd play hockey and just have a good time, some good clean fun. And then also when she was talking about all the snow, whenever I wanted to get from point A to point B, when the roads were snowy, we would hide on the side of a car, and when the person would get in their car and take off, you would sit behind and you grab the bumper, and you would just let the car tow you around on your feet, And then, and then when you got to where you were going to go, you would just let go and roll off to the side. Yeah, so that was how I got from point A to point B. Yeah.
Thank you, Lord, you lived through that.
And on the lakes again, ice fishing in the wintertime, we'd build ice fishing huts, and we'd go out there and have a little fire on the ice, and would cut a hole in the ice, and we'd sit out there in cardboard boxes. We didn't have anything fancy, just something to keep the wind off us, and take our fishing poles and some bait, and we'd sit out there and do some fishing. And then I thought, there's a better way of doing this. I thought, I'm going to make coffee. So I would make coffee, and I would go knock on the other fishermen's doors and sell coffee to 10 cents a cup. A lot of people didn't want to pay that much for it, But I did. And then when I got through, if I ran out of coffee, then I would sell them the hot coals so they could keep the coals in there and keep their hands and feet warm. And then I'd go home.
When we look back, I am amazed at how the Lord protected us. Because when we ice skated on ponds that were very deep, when he ice fished and skated on the lake, which was very deep, we didn't have parents with us. And when we walked those places, we were safe. There wasn't the crime that there is now, but God spared us from drowning or any of the accidents. Holding on the cars, and wow, thank you, Lord, you spared him. So God was good in protecting us even before we personally knew him. Yes. I grew up Methodist. He grew up Catholic. Well, I made a quilt that represents our life. And it starts with Lakewood, New York, 1951, when Ed was born. And I made a quilt of each house we ever lived at. But first I had to have our births. So this says January. No, it says Jamestown, 1952. That's when I was born, and we told you about growing up. But after we were married, he called me and said, Marsha, we have orders. You'll never guess where we're going. It starts with a new. And I said, New Jersey, because we were in New York, and he said no, and I said, New Hampshire, and he said no, and I said, I don't know any more news, and he said, we're moving to New Mexico. And so I got the map out and studied where we were going to go, and in 1970 we moved to our first home together in Clovis, New Mexico. It was a fun time. We were newlyweds, and it was wonderful. In Clovis, New Mexico, before we went overseas, we went to a evangelistic meeting that lasted for 3 days, and there was an evangelistic speaker that came. And having grown up Baptist, I never knew about asking Jesus as your Lord and Savior. And he came, and by the third night, it was his last night, I could feel my heart burst beating big in my head, and I knew I had to go forward. And so I went forward and accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. It was a whole new thing I had never understood. I knew all the Bible stories, I knew all the answers, but I didn't know him personally. And that was the beginning of a little bit of struggle between Ed and I, because he was still very Catholic, and I had a new life and a new way of looking things. And I'll tell, as we go from base to base, I'll tell you how it affected Ed and when he got saved. Maybe I'll let him tell that. After we were in New Mexico for 3 years, and we had our first child, we got orders for Taiwan, and it was a time of Vietnam, and Taiwan is only just across the water from Vietnam. And it was a remote tour for Ed to go without his family. And there was a sergeant that worked with Ed that said, but you don't have to be alone. You could pay for your wife to go there because it's a safe area, and you could bring your family. So in 1973, Ed had headed off for CCK, Taichung, Taiwan, and as soon as he found a house and sent us you called us actually long distance and said, I have a place for us to live, please come. So my daughter and I got visas, which was very difficult for Taiwan, and we flew. It was 27-hour flight with a just one and a half, 2-year-old. It was a difficult flight, but it was worth it because Daddy was at the other end. So we stayed in Taiwan only a small time, and the United States lost diplomatic relations with Taiwan because of China. And so they said, you have to get out. Well, we knew that Ed was getting out, and we didn't know where he was going, but we knew it would probably be one of two places.
Right. And what happened was I came into work one day, and all these C-130 aircraft are lined up on the runways. The engine's running, and I go, oh, what's going on? And they said, we are leaving. And we all had to process through a gymnasium. They didn't tell us where we were going. We had to get everything together. They packed up tables and chairs and palletized everything, typewriters, just everything in the buildings, loaded them up on the C-130s, put the troops on it. We took off, had no idea where I was going. We landed, and when you came down the taxiway, we saw the sign that said, welcome to the Philippines. So I ended up in the Philippines, where some people went to Okinawa, and some people I think maybe went to somewhere else, I'm not sure, I forget. But I ended up going to the Philippines, and we ended up staying there. So
in the meantime, I had to get a visa, and I had to explain to Taiwan authorities why I was leaving Taiwan. And so because of the military, they understood. I took a train to Taipei and got a visa. And I moved to the Philippines because our neighbors from New Mexico were stationed in the Philippines, and I knew I could safely go there, and hopefully that's where Ed would end up because we didn't know anyone in Okinawa. We moved to Angeles City, the Philippines, and I lived with Frank and Lisa until we found a little house on Mabini Street, and we lived in the Philippines for a year with a 2-year-old, and we had a maid and a yard boy, and everything was very inexpensive there, but there was one downfall. Marcos was in charge of the regime, and we were under martial law. So we had to be in the evening early, and no one could go out all evening until morning, till daylight. So it was a very difficult time for us. We didn't have a car there, and we rode our bikes everywhere. And while we were there, I became a Red Cross volunteer. In the back of my mind forever, since I was in 4th grade, I wanted to do nursing. So that was my very beginning of Red Cross volunteer and getting into the medical. And I worked at the Clark Air Force Base Hospital as a volunteer with the Red Cross. And of course, our maid took care of our child. And that was nice. It was a great time.
It was a good tour.
We learned how to cook food from the Philippine people, and we learned all about their island, and it was fun.
No, it wasn't as safe in the Philippines as it was other places we'd been. In fact, when we found a place to rent, the Navy would have to come out and approve it. You had to have bars on your windows and doors and different security features, just because the theft rate was pretty high. And it's a poverty-stricken country, at least at the time. I don't know if it's improved any over the years, but that was different, having to have bars on your windows.
So when we were in Taiwan and when we were in the Philippines, we had bars on our windows. We had bars coming to the front door. We had benjo ditches all around the house, and we were not used to any of that. And benjo ditches, sewage going right in a drainage right past your front door. And we didn't have a car at either place. We had to walk or ride a bike or take a bus everywhere we went. And yes, our oldest daughter, she was the only one we had then. She did play a little bit with the children in Taiwan and in the Philippines, but they didn't speak the same language, but they still knew how to love a baby doll and play with talcum powder. You know, we did the best we could to have her have other children around. But this was the very beginning of me starting with women's Bible studies. So I would go on base every day, and I would go to the library with other women that were Christians, and their children would come and we would play, and I would be safe on base all day while Ed was on base, and we would go back to our apartment together, so we weren't alone in the apartment. From the Philippines, we moved to Plattsburgh, New York, and we were excited because it was only 7.5 to 8 hours away from our parents. It was snowy and it was cold, but it was a wonderful assignment for us. We had 2 children there. Our son Scott was born there, and our daughter Janelle, she was a big surprise. We had a boy and a girl, and we thought we were finished. And the Lord said, "No, I have a surprise for you." And it was Janelle, Rebecca. And that was really wonderful for us. And also, while we were in Plattsburgh, I took classes and became a CNA, they call it. So I was a nurse assistant to begin with before I went to nursing school.
I was a jet engine mechanic. And what we would do, we would tear the jet engines down to the bearings and rebuild them, and then put them back in the aircraft. But the tour itself in Plattsburgh was great. I know it was cold. I know there was a lot of snow, but I liked the deer hunt, and I mean it's great country for hunting and fishing and duck hunting. Oh yeah, we tried to do it all. Building duck blinds and going up in the Adirondacks and spending time up there. It was good. It was a good time of my life. Did a lot of camping. We bought a camper, take the kids out to the lakes and
Adirondacks, yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, sure did. Pulled the kids out of fires when they fall in, and then pick them up out of the water when they fall off the docks. You know, the kids will be kids. You know, but yeah, that was good. It was good duty.
Each place that we've gone, the Lord has given me a woman to mentor me. And when we were in Plattsburgh, Johnny Jones was my mentor, and she helped me learn about the book of Titus and how older women are going to teach the younger women how to be a housewife and a mother and how to love the Lord and study God's Word. And from the very time I became a born-again Christian until now, I've still always been a part of a weekly Bible study. And nothing can beat that. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Because it teaches you how to be a child of God at no matter what age you're at. You need that. And so we had that.
I think I need to explain one thing before we
Okay.
move forward. And that was when I talked about kids falling in fires. I mean, it was one of those things sitting around the campfire. Kids are just running around being kids. And our boy, he tripped and he fell and boom, there he goes. And I just grab him, pick him up. No
Out of
burn
a
marks,
fire.
nothing. You know, just like grace of God, you know, didn't get burned at all.
And the next
And
day,
then the next day, Marsha wanted to take a canoe out, and I said, "Go ahead, go." She said, "Oh no, I worry about the kids." I said, "Well, the kids are going to be fine." And she got out there, and what happens? We're throwing sticks out at the end of the dock, and the dogs are jumping and getting them. Well, I threw a stick out there, and my daughter, she goes running down the end of the dock.
your son.
Or my son, yeah, Scott. He decided he was going to go retrieve that stick in the water, and Marsha's watching, and he jumps off the end of the dock. I'm going, oh my word! I said, and there's Marsha yelling, "Oh God, everything's good here," you know. I see her paddling, you know, she's coming back in, you know, to retrieve them, and I could see my boy's blonde hair just floating around. I just grabbed him by the hair, pulled him out, and that was it. He was okay too. I mean, yeah, it was different.
But all the snow and all the hard times in Plattsburgh, with the children being young and sick from the cold, we said, wow, there's another way. There's other bases. What do you think? Where could we go? So I said, let's get out of there. Let's go somewhere warm, Ed. And you filled out your dream sheet. And where did Uncle Sam take us?
I don't know, where'd we go after that?
Arizona.
Oh, Phoenix, outside of Phoenix, yeah.
So next we moved to Phoenix,
That was
Arizona.
Luke Air Force.
Luke Air Force Base. Glendale, Arizona. And the best part about Arizona was the Christian people we met, the fellowship. We started in our first care group. And I highly recommend care groups because to this day, we're in care groups where people love and share and take care of each other and teach you how to handle elementary and teenagers that are troubled and teach you how to be married and how to fight fair and how to do the things you need to do. But we had Laura and Chris Mino in Glendale, Arizona, and they led our group, and they were so wonderful, weren't they, Ed?
Very good people.
He was a colonel in the Air
Very Christian
Force.
people.
Let's talk about Luke Air Force Base and how special it was.
Go ahead.
You were a coach for years and years
Oh,
and
yeah.
years.
Yep. I used to coach the kids T-ball. Started off with that, and gosh, I don't know, for probably 4 or 5 years anyways. Just teaching them the basics and playing ball, and it was a good time. Had good teams, and sometimes we didn't have such good teams, but the kids
We were always the
seemed to have fun.
Yankees. We were
Yeah.
always the Yankees,
Yeah,
right?
always the Yankees. Yeah, that's my go-to team, and then I even got involved in. They needed a soccer coach, and I don't know the first thing about soccer other than the objective is
That
to
was
kick
the
the ball
beginning.
into the net, you know. And they needed a coach, so of course I raised my hand, and then finally some people stepped up and started helping me, and you know I got through it, you know. But it was just something I wanted to do. My daughter wanted to play soccer. She used to play baseball, but and she would get up to the plate and she would just stand there like a statue. She wouldn't swing the bat. She wouldn't even move when the ball hit her. She just hoped that the ball would hit her so she would get on base, you know.
That was the oldest child.
Yeah, the oldest son, Jerry Lynn. Yeah, she would just stand there and hope that the ball would hit her. And then I introduced her to softball, and that was an altogether different story. That was right up her alley. She was.
And Scotty,
she was
he was coach for years and years until the kids were out of high school. It was Coach Ed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I had a lot of good quality time with the kids, you know.
While we were in Arizona, it was wonderful because we could go to Las Vegas, we could go to California, we could go to Colorado, and we always wanted to travel a lot, and we had been doing a lot of traveling, but that's when we started paying attention to, all right, let's hit this state and this state and this state, because eventually we want to do all 50 states, which this last year I hit my 50th state, and in January Ed's going to hit his 50th state. So as of today, we've been to 30 countries and 50 states. So it's wonderful because when I met Ed and he said he wanted to go in the Air Force, I thought, Air Force travels around a lot, and I want to see the world. And truly we have, haven't we?
Yeah,
Truly we
30
have.
countries worth. That's a lot. Yeah.
So while we were in Arizona, Ed filled out what's called a dream sheet, where you want to go next. And we both, don't know how this happened, but we both wanted to live in Holland. And only, I think, 1 or 2% of the Air Force goes
Very few people.
goes
yeah.
to the Netherlands.
Of course, I put in that dream sheet, that Holland was on the list, and one day all these orders came down, and there was 2 of my good friends. They got orders. I got orders. We were told to report to a particular building to find out what was, where we're going. And one of them got Korea. One of them got, I forget where, maybe another, but it wasn't any place nice.
I think Guam, and it was alone.
Yeah, maybe Guam
Yeah.
and Korea. Yeah, we'll say those 2. And I'm
Without their
Yeah,
families.
without their family going, oh my, where am I going? So they gave it to me. They said, Ed, you're going to the Netherlands. And I could have fainted. I was so happy. I said, you gotta be kidding me. And they said, no, you're gonna go. It's a 4-year hitch.
Sponsored
Wow, yeah.
for your wife and children,
Yeah.
which means we're going to pay for everything you own and your children and your wife to move there. So that was the beginning of we had a kindergartner and we had a 6th grader. So for the next 6 years, we moved to the Netherlands, probably our favorite base of all, Leusden, the Netherlands. And for 6 years, we raised elementary and high schoolers.
Okay. And the name of the base was Camp New Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. It was New Amsterdam, like New York. How fitting. Yeah.
How wonderful it was, because if you picture it as a state, you're in one country and you can go to all the other countries and they're very close. So family would start to come and they would visit and want to come to the Netherlands. And from there, we would take them to France and Spain, and we would take them to Germany, and we would take them to Belgium. We would take them to many countries.
Luxembourg.
And they were all close, and it was wonderful. And one time, Ed's parents came, and we followed his World War II track. When he was in World War II, he was in France at Normandy, but not during D-Day. But he went from Normandy through all of France and up into Germany. And he still had his old map. And we traveled the route that he did in the war through those countries. And we took our children with, and we taught them about Normandy, and we taught them about a bridge too far, and all the important things that soldiers had done and gave their lives for the kids' freedoms. And it was a wonderful time. And the thing we loved, we were talking about it today, the thing we loved about Europe was Christmas time at the Christmas markets.
And especially in Germany. Germany does it right when it comes to Christmas markets. Yeah, and that's where I was introduced to chestnuts. They would have the chestnut vendor, and I bought everyone in the family chestnuts, and it was freezing cold there. I mean, so we'd take those chestnuts and we'd put them in our pockets and use them as hand warmers until the chestnuts cooled off, and then you crack them open when you need them. And to this day, every year I get chestnuts, and I've got some in the refrigerator right now, just waiting to be cooked.
So
But,
chestnuts roasting on an open fire has a different meaning for us, and it's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just thinking about all the places we went.
And then getting back to when we used to travel when we were in Holland, then each country had their own money. They didn't have the euro. Every time you crossed the border, you'd take what money you had, put it in a bag somewhere, because you're not going to use it unless you come back to that country, and you'd have to get the next country's money out. And of course, they had a different exchange rate. One might be 3-1, one might be 7-1. No, every time you buy something, you're thinking,
How much does
how
this
much
cost?
is this really costing me? Is this a good deal or not? When you have to, with the different ratios. So I think probably going to the euro is probably a good deal.
And our kids knew what was called Big Ed's Easy Conversion Chart. And every country we were going to go to, he made a conversion chart for them. And it was a good math lesson. $1 is this, $5 is this, $10 is this. So don't ask. If you see how much it costs, don't ask, are we going to buy this for you? Look at your conversion chart and know how much it's worth. So
For each country.
That was a great lesson.
Yeah.
And our good friends from Arizona, Chris and Laura Mino, when we were in the Netherlands, they were stationed in Germany. So we would go back and forth visiting them, and they would come to see us. So we got to keep that contact with close brother and sister of the Lord. And I actually traveled on the train to go to the other bases and speak at Protestant Women of the Chapel lessons with Laura. So it was a wonderful, wonderful time. And we always went to the chapel, and in the chaplaincy, you would have chaplains from different Methodist, Lutheran, Pentecostal, Assembly of God. Every 2 or 3 years, you'd get a different one, and we'd have 3 at a time. So we were used to hearing from Baptist and Methodist, hearing God's word, and we could understand and accept everyone's beliefs. A little bit different than maybe what we thought, but mostly they taught us to study God's word, study the Bible. It was a good time. Ed was involved in the chapel too, and we loved it. The kids were in youth group there.
Yeah. Okay, well, when we were in Holland, it was time to come back to the States, and I started filling out some different dream sheets again. And well, we really wanted to go to Florida, and but it wasn't meant to be, I guess, because I had offers to go to New Jersey and South Carolina to Charleston, and it just wasn't any place I wanted to go. So I had the option to extend in Holland for a couple more years, and they were willing to honor those extensions because it was saving the government money because they didn't have to move us, you know. So they said, okay, so we extended for 2 more years, and then eventually, when those 2 years were up, we did our farewells and goodbyes to the folks. And we had a lot of great friends and Dutch friends, and you know, it was just so beautiful there. And I got the orders for Florida, and we ended up going to Tampa to Luke Air Force Base.
Now let me tell them.
Or MacDill.
Yeah, MacDill Air Force
not
Base.
Luke, but
But
MacDill.
before we got the orders, my parents retired. My dad retired and my mom was still working, and they bought a home in Florida. And they bought a home in Lake Wales, which was 60 miles from Tampa, Florida. And when we got our orders for Tampa, we knew we were only going to be 1 hour from my parents when they eventually showed up there. But my mom was still working, so when we got our orders, we moved to Florida, and we lived in my parents' home, and Ed traveled to the base, and I stayed with our kids in my parents' home where they lived until we bought our own home. And we asked the kids, do you want a house that's near the beach, or do you want a house with a swimming pool? Because in Florida, you're going to have one or the other. And all of them wanted a house with a swimming pool. So we were 30 to 40 minutes from the beach in Seffner, Florida, near Brandon. And we had a swimming pool and a jacuzzi. And this was a time where we totally had junior high, high school, and college all the time, all the difficult times raising him, and all the fun times too. But our first birthday party, as soon as we moved in, Janelle had a birthday in October, and our first party had bobbing for apples in the jacuzzi. So we decided this is very nice. This is nice weather. And it was a blessing for us because my parents were only 1 hour away, and they were healthy at first, and then my father wasn't as healthy, and he had some open heart surgery and quite a few things that it was easy for us to go back and forth to be with them while Ed finished out his career in the Air Force. And it was my turn to study because when we were overseas, I couldn't, but now that we were back in the States, I wanted to go to nursing school. So I applied to, first I became a phlebotomist, and then because I had everything ready, and I took a last minute, it was a 2-year wait to get into nursing school, but someone canceled the weekend before starting, and because I had already done phlebotomy and my paperwork was ready, I slid right into a class and started nursing. So his last few years of the Air Force were my few years of going to nursing school, while we had a junior high, a high schooler, and a college student of our own.
So I had 2 years of Mr. Mom.
Yes, so he was
That was
Mr.
my
Mom.
job.
Definitely there.
Yeah.
But it was a good time while we were in Florida.
Florida was nice. I can understand why some people want to live there, but it just wasn't
Hot.
for me.
It was too
It is
hot.
so hot and humid, and everything would either mildew or rust, and you know, I'd try to go fishing. I would take the kids out into a canoe, and we'd go to these freshwater ponds, and you'd be out there. You know, you're clunking around with the paddles and you're fishing, and all of a sudden, boom, a head pops up, and then boom, another head pops up, and here's these gators that are all thinking, you know, I look pretty tasty,
yucky.
you know. So I'm thinking, okay, I can't handle this, you know. So I turn the canoe around, you know. That's what I'm getting out of here, and yeah, little things like that. I used to do a lot of bird hunting, and there were just rattlesnakes. You know, you'd shoot and you hear a rattlesnake buzzed. And I said, no. I said, I gotta leave.
But we had good time in Florida. And
Yeah.
the kids had, class night was at Disney. We were just, how far from Disney? 40 minutes?
Yeah, less
so
than an hour.
lots
Yeah.
of Disney time and lots of, it was perfect for high schoolers because they got to have the best of both worlds. Clearwater Beach was right down the road. Disney was down the other road. And my family was all in Florida in different places. So that was nice for us.
So at this point in time, I'd been in the Air Force about 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what, it's time to turn it over to the younger guys. You know, the funny thing
You were
is,
young.
here I am, 38 years old, but I'm the old timer. All right? Because everyone coming in is like 20 years younger than me. And I'm the old timer there. So I finally retire. And then I find myself out here in the civilian sector. And now I'm the young guy. Because people are working till they're 60 and 70, and I'm only 40.
Yeah.
It's just what a change in life, you know, that was for me. When I got out, I was in Florida, and I went down to, I forget what the building was called, but where they have different jobs posted, and there was a park ranger job. The job's available. So I said, well, I'm just going to go ahead and apply, and I'll be darned if I didn't get a phone call that they needed a park ranger in one of the county parks outside of Tampa. And they called me, and I went and I was interviewed, and I guess I had the right answers because they hired me, and I worked there for how many years was it? Were we there?
While I was in nursing school.
Probably at least 3 or
yeah.
4 anyways, you know, as a
Yeah.
park ranger. And that was a real experience. Now I have to admit, when you go from the military life to the civilian sector, it's really different because in the military you don't really question everybody and everything that you do. Okay, you're there, you're told to do something, you do it. And I find in the civilian sector, there's a lot of, I don't want to do this. Okay, you know what I mean? I see a lot of insubordination within jobs, and it's just something that was hard for me to accept, you know, to deal with. But you do, I mean, you learn to accept it. I mean, maybe I don't accept it, I just deal with it, you know. Not that people were disrespectful to me, but I've seen people be respectful to others, and I'm thinking, it's not right, you know. I wasn't going to be a park ranger forever, and then I took some tests with the post office, and they called me again and wanted to know if they needed a custodial job, and I said, yeah, I'll consider it, you know. So I did that, and I ended up 18 years later.
Yeah.
So then I retired from the post office. Well, we had a couple of options. We could either take a dart and throw it, you know, and see where it lands, but I came up with an ingenious idea. I got this map of the United States. I opened it up and I took the 2 bottom corners and I brought them up and I creased it.
Because your parents were in New York.
And
my
your
parents were in Florida.
So I folded
Halfway.
the map, I creased it, I opened it up, and I followed the crease across, and it came to North Carolina. I said,
Halfway
Marsha,
between, yes.
I said, you want to go to North Carolina? And you said,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah. So that's what we did, and
You
We just-
applied for jobs because you were
Yeah.
post office now. He applied for jobs and they offered him two, one in Asheville and one in Greensboro. And I started looking at jobs in the two areas. And lo and behold, Janelle applied for college and was going to go to college in North Carolina.
at Queens
And
and Charlotte.
And our oldest daughter already lived in North Carolina with her husband. And our son, who was in the Marines, got stationed in North Carolina. So they all three ended up.
You would think there's only
before
one
us.
state in the union at this rate. We all ended up in North
But
Carolina.
we had picked North Carolina, and all three of our kids ended up there before us. But we used to have a sign at our door that said, "Home is where the Air Force sends you." And this is the first home that we moved to that the Air Force didn't send us to. We chose. And of all the places we've lived, we love it here. We found a wonderful church the very first month we were here. We've been going to the church for 27 years, and Ed's an elder there, and we have wonderful friends there that encourage and help us. We have a care group, Sunday school. It's wonderful, and we love North Carolina, don't we?
I do. I'll never leave.
This is where
I'll
we'll
still
be.
stay here for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we were thinking about maybe where were some other places that we liked better. I can't think of one, but we did enjoy it. We took a trip from here. We went out west to California and back and saw all the different sites, Mount Rushmore, and visited places where I'd been stationed 20-some years prior.
Oh, that was so much fun.
And that was just a lot of fun. And so this is like number one for us.
Traveling is our favorite thing, and going to see military families that we were with is a wonderful thing. And in just, it says on the calendar, I think it says 49 days, we're going to Hawaii, and that's the one place Ed's not been of all the 50 states, and he wants to see Pearl Harbor. And so we have our reservation, and we're taking a cruise ship to the islands and then back. So now I'm showing the last house on the quilt that I've made that says Oak Ridge, North Carolina. And when we came to North Carolina, we looked and looked at houses and tried to find a place to live. And we had our camper with us, and we actually lived in our daughter's backyard in our camper while we looked for houses. And we had a new grandson, Casey, at the time, and it was so much fun. But we couldn't find a house we liked, and we actually decided when we saw this neighborhood to build a house. And we were the first house in this division. Now it's a big, beautiful neighborhood. But we built the house, and we've added on to it once already so that Ed's parents could live here. And we love our house in Oak Ridge, North Carolina. And Janelle and Scott Robinson and their three children live only 8 minutes away if I'm in a hurry. And our other daughter lives 2 hours away in North Carolina. And Scott and Mary, our son, and our grandchildren, Julia and Danielle, live in New Hampshire. So we get to travel up to New Hampshire and back at least once a year. But North Carolina's it for us. It's our home, right?
This is home.
This is it.
There's nothing
Yeah.
moving anywhere.
We can't guess God. Don't even try. He had a plan, and he stuck with it.
I mean, we have good kids. I'm not saying we don't have issues like every family does, but I would never trade them for anyone else. I'm going to keep them. They're all keepers. We're proud of them. They've all done well, really well with their lives and their families. So yeah,
I think
I'm
being
ecstatic.
a parent has been my greatest joy. Absolutely. And I was the parent that loved them when they were at home, and I loved them to bring their friends, and I loved having pizza and cookies for them and their friends. And it was wonderful when they were gone and I was an empty nest. I had this empty nest syndrome for sure, and I was depressed, sad. And then you have to patiently wait until the grandchildren come so that you can begin the entire process again. And having grandchildren in our life is it a bigger blessing than our children, or the equal?
Equally as nice.
It's wonderful having the grandchildren too. So yeah.
Maybe a little special because you can spoil them and send them home. You're not going to spoil your own too much, but the others you can.
And it's fun watching our kids as they parent, how they parent, and what parts of did they like that we did, because they might be doing some things totally opposite, not how we did it. So yeah, it's been probably one of the greatest joys of my life to have 3 wonderful children. I would thank Janelle for hitching us up with you guys, even though we figured out that we already knew you, which blows my mind. But for giving us the opportunity to share these things, because already in just our early 70s, it's so easy to forget all the good things that have happened and all the ways that God blessed us and the things He's done and brought us through. You don't remember unless you put it down and put it down in words. And so I would like to thank Janelle especially for that. She's a good gift giver. She comes up with some good things, and this is probably one of her best. And
Janelle is always full of surprises.
yes.
You never know what to expect, but this has been really great. We're honored to do this, and it was probably something I would have never thought of doing on my own, So, Janelle, thank you, honey. We love you.
Okay, so now let's do Jerry Lynn. What would we say for Jerry Lynn, our firstborn? The one we made the most mistakes with. The one we were teenagers at, literally 19 and 20, trying to raise a new baby and not know what we were doing. And she was just a tiny bit to travel all around the world with me, my travel buddy, before the other 2 came.
Jerry, you were almost maintenance free. She really didn't have any problems, no troubles with her whatsoever. And Jerry, I want to thank you for being patient with Mom and I as parents. Being parents for the first time, we were learning. We were learning as parents as you were learning, which you couldn't do as a child.
Right.
But it was as learn as you go, and we love you, and we're so proud of you, and just continue to do what you're doing. We're so grateful for you.
Okay, now let's do Scott together. From a mother's point of view, I had a perfect firstborn little girl, and then we had a boy, and he was the Dickens. I tell you what, I thought he's going to run into the street and get hit by a fire truck before he was 2, because he was so full of energy and so full of life. But God did give us our heart's desire, because you wanted a hunter and a fisherman, and you have that in him.
Yeah.
He calls Ed all the time to ask him hunting questions, and
Yeah, he does. He'll call me at any given time, and he'll start talking and remembering things that I have forgotten about from years past. And I'll say,
That you
my
taught
word,
him.
yeah, things that maybe I've taught him, or things we've done together, or discussions that we've had. And he's just doing where I left off. He picks up and keeps going on. I don't care if it's deer hunting or duck hunting, and I'm just so thankful that Scott, that you keep calling me and reminding me of the things that I've forgotten all about in life. It's like it's just so exciting to answer that phone whenever you call, and I appreciate you and I love you, and I don't ever want it to end. So just keep those calls coming. I love you, buddy. Yeah.
we were proud that Ed was Air Force and Scott one-upped him and was a Marine. And then we were especially proud that he chose an Air Force wife. And his wife, Mary, did 20 years in the service and did 2 tours of Afghanistan. And while she was gone, Scott was Mr. Mom, and I think he only forgot to feed his granddaughter the first tour once. He said he forgot supper one night. But they're a beautiful military family and wonderful. And their 2 children, Danielle and Julia, we miss them terrible because they're in New Hampshire, but this year we get to go for Danny's high school graduation and Julia's wedding. So we're looking forward to 2025 to spending extra time with them.
And one note on the side is they asked me why did I go into the Air Force, or maybe why I didn't go into the Army or the Marines, and I always tell them, I said, well, I'm a lover.
Air Force is for lovers.
Air Force is for lovers. I'm not a fighter. So
Yeah,
that's where I leave
that's
that.
for sure. It's been a real ride, hasn't it?
It has been, yeah. And it's one I would do over again. I don't regret any of it.
Being involved in their activities, knowing their friends, having them involved in church activities and youth group, and
just supporting them, whatever they're
having
doing.
support from the church and our friends and what to do. We always had friends that had kids a little older than our kids telling us our kids did this and maybe you should want to try this. James Dobson in Focus on the Family has been, sometimes when the kids would do something, I'd say, wait just a minute. And I would run in the book, get the book on Raising a Strong-Willed Child and see what James Dobson would tell me to do in this instance. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Prayer.
There was never a lack of people giving you information, and what they've come across, what they've seen. And there was always someone who could give you some good advice, just not advice, but good advice, and that's what's important.
But personally, I don't know how anyone does it without Jesus, without prayer, and without continually asking for wisdom what to do, because you don't always know what to do. But He knows. Oh my goodness, my grandchildren are so special to me. And when we built this house, our grandson Casey, who's the oldest, was a little baby, and we set him in the window when the window wasn't even there yet. So we know how old this house is because how old Casey is. And then his brother came along right after him, and they would visit so often, and it was wonderful having him, wasn't it?
It was.
I can just picture them in this house as little, and then when Mary and Scott had children and they moved away, I thought, what will I do? I can't stand to miss them so. And then Janelle and Scott had kids and lived close, and that's been such a joy to be able to participate in some of their activities and do things with them, go to school lunches and soccer games and all the fun things we did with our children, now we can do with grandchildren.
One thing I'd like to tell my grandchildren is, in life growing up, when your parents tell you to do something or give you direction, listen to them. Okay, they've been down that same road that you're going down now. Your parents are not going to set you up for failure. So just listen to them. Listen to their guidance, and just believe me, everything will be okay.
Everything is going to be all right. Maybe I wouldn't have spanked a child when I didn't know both sides of the story. Maybe I wouldn't have pulled Janelle's hair because she made me so mad when we were going to a wedding. Yeah, I would like to say I'm sorry to Janelle for that. I would, honestly. Why did I do that? I don't know. Yes, we've made many mistakes as parents, but would I change anything about where we've lived or what we've done? No, I would just be more loving.
Yeah, I don't believe our love has changed for them. I'm not gonna sit there. I can't even think of anything I would want to do over again. Maybe you kids can think of something I should want to do over again, but right now, as I sit here, I can't think of anything, so feel free to give me a call. But no.
Well, we would have to end with who took the Umbro shorts. You say it too.
Yeah, who took the Umbro shorts? I mean, someone knows the answer.
Someone in our family knows the truth.
Yeah. Some Umbro shorts were missing, and then one day, mysteriously, they showed up on a bed, and all 3 kids to this day deny it. So, we love you just the same.
I was religious before I met Jesus, and then I became a Christian, and having Jesus Lord of my life has been the most important thing I've ever done in my life, ever.
Yeah, God has been my rock. He has been. I mean, I'm not saying I don't screw up and disappoint him, but I'm glad he's forgiving, and we love both of us love the Lord, and
But I forgot to say that part. I said I would say I got saved. He was still Catholic, and I had a women's group that told me, when you were in bed at night, lay your hands on your husband, pray God's word over him, and pray for him to know Jesus the way you know him. And slowly but surely, he quit going to Mass, and he started coming to church with me. And I found a church that had a wonderful band and a drummer and guitar music that was wonderful. He loved the music.
I did.
He came, and by the third time, he accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior, and he was baptized in Chris and Laura's swimming pool.
I remember that. Yes.
Yes. So, wives, grandchildren, when you're married, pray for your spouse. Lay hands on them when they're sleeping. And don't go to bed mad at each other.
Get to know the Lord and be faithful to him. Rely on him. Count on him. God makes promises. He's not going to break them. He's going to keep his promises for you. You just have to have that faith. Just believe. Just be with him.
And we all came with instructions, and it's the Bible. And the Bible you might think is old-fashioned, and you might not think it's the answer, but it is the answer. And if you dig in, starting with the book of John, you will find the way and the truth and the life.
All right, Janelle made this for me. I forget, was it for a birthday?
Your retirement.
My retirement, okay. All right. And some things that she was thinking when she thinks of me, and this is what she put down on this plaque. And it said, "Let's go Buffalo," because that's my favorite team, Buffalo Bills. And then Uncle Sam and Papa Santa. I had Uncle Sam costume, and I had a Santa costume, and I used to put that on in front of the grandkids so I wouldn't scare them. So I said, this is Papa Santa.
Colorful Papa.
Yep. I was a park ranger at one time. Give Thanks is one of my favorite Christian songs. I've been known as Dad and Papa. I used to work for the post office. I've got my high school sweetheart here by my side. I used to play left field in baseball in high school. I retired as a master sergeant, and they used to call me Master Sergeant Big Ed. I graduated in 1969. I was a caretaker for my parents. They both moved in with me, with Marsha and I, before they passed on. And I was a linebacker in playing football in high school. And I had a gridiron grill, I called it. It was one of those big portable grills that you hook up behind your vehicle and you tow it, and you go from place to place. And that was my mission, was what it was. I would just, whenever the tornadoes came through different areas, I would hook up to it, and I would just go buy some food. And one day there was a tornado, and it was in High Point, and I'm leaning against that grill. And I think, gosh, I sure wish there was something I could be doing for these people. I feel so sorry for them. And it was like the Lord just smacked me across the head. You know, he said, "Ed, you got this big grill, go use it." And I said, good idea. So I went to the store and I bought different foods and drinks and desserts, and I showed up on site and I told the people what I was going to do or wanted to do. And the people said, "Pull up here on our yard, come on." And I fed people for the entire day. And I mean, they didn't know where their next hot meal was coming from. It wasn't anything fancy, dogs and burgers and chicken and stuff like that, but to them it was like a steak dinner, you know. So I did that for many years. I would just go to different areas. I'd go as far as Florida, pulling it.
That was the first food truck at First Christian, because then he started bringing people from our church. And now we have a huge food truck. Yeah. But Ed and his truck and his grill were the first. And I just want to say, not only is the sign beautiful, but on the back of this sign, Janelle has thanked her dad for many things, including teaching her how to work hard. And she says, especially, Dad, I want to thank you for loving Jesus. And that's just a wonderful tribute to her father.